Hello, my name is Oscar Fire, and welcome to me talking about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. It was coming. Y'all knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And man, did that movie manage to disappoint me. I honestly considered starting this with a gag of some sort, but it just, nah, there's no point. I might as well just get right into the discussion. So, first things first, I'm probably going to discuss this in actually two different videos, if only because one, I don't have a lot of time right now to actually record like all my thoughts on the movie. Knowing that, but I'm probably going to forget things while I'm recording now. Um, but also because there's just a lot to unpack here because there are things that bother me about the movie, and there are even things that I liked about the movie. It's just that in order to address them all properly, I think it really needs to be split up into two separate videos. So what this is going to be is that this particular video is going to focus on the things I talked about last time, the first time even when I talked about Star Wars, when I was talking about like the state of the galaxy after before and during the Force Awakens, right? When I did that video a couple of months ago. I'm gonna do a video like that. I'm also going to like talk a bit about the military tactics used in The Last Jedi. And then for the second video, I'm going to talk about things like plot and character and plot holes. In a more general sense, because I think that I think that could use its own video just to be broken down a little more in depth. So, pardon me, for some reason I'm not like sick. It's just for some reason my nose has just like been kind of clogged since I woke up. Yeah, because you need to know that. Anyway, but yes. So if you see me like rubbing my nose or whatever, just that's why it's slightly irritated. All right. So anyway, so the Last Jedi. Oh, there's a lot of things wrong with The Last Jedi. In fact, I would say there are more problems in the sense that like there's military strategy blunders and the quote-unquote geopolitical state of the galaxy is just ludicrously unclear and even wrong. Those facets are, there's so much to unpack in those facets. So I guess we'll just kind of start with the beginning of the movie, which is the opening title, the opening crawl, where it says the First Order reigns, and that the Republic is basically defeated. Bear in mind that this movie is starting not even 48 hours after Starkiller Base was blown up. Indeed, it's probably only about 12 hours at most since Starkiller was blown up, since the rebels are the rebels. See, I'm already calling them that too. Since the Resistance is still evacuating its base, and it's like the First Order is currently, it's currently still reacting to the First Order, the Resistance even. I'm going to mix up these names a lot because I use them all wrong. But anyway, is still reacting. They just sent their fleet in. So it's like it can't be more than half a day since Starkiller Base was blown up. And yet apparently this is all the case. And you're just like, at least that's what I'm like. Because again, it goes back to what I discussed ages ago. It's like, why is the First Order so strong and why is the New Republic so weak? Even with the New Republic demilitarized, surely there is some element in the New Republic still capable of fighting back against the First Order. Like, I'm sorry, I don't understand why this is a scenario. And I think I feel like this is very obviously a plot contrivance, to give this sense that there's no help coming for the Resistance, which, for the entire course of the movie, there is no help coming for the Resistance. I'll get to that later on, though. But that in and of itself just bugs the hell out of me, because it's just like the New Republic has to be this massive entity. Now, from what I've read since, from what I understand, the Galactic Empire actually still exists. It's just that it still has control of it's just that it's been demilitarized itself, via treaty. and it just controls like the core worlds, which first of all is incredibly stupid. Why would you cede the core worlds to? Why would you cede the core worlds to the Galactic Empire? Why would you let the Galactic Empire literally have the most valuable planets in the entire galaxy in terms of population, in terms of overall productivity, in terms of manufacturing, and then get like, I don't know, the mid-rim and the outer rim? Like, how stupid was that? Well, how stupid is that treaty for the New Republic to do? At the very least, it's like get some of it's like sign a treaty that allows the New Republic to have some of the core, some of the have some of the core worlds, and then and then a whole bunch of the outlying systems that were already part of the rebellion. That seems like it makes a lot more sense to me than let's just have the Galactic Empire have the entire core. It's just like, are you retarded? That's not even a word I use frequently to like say something stupid. I don't know how else to describe that. It's like, are you suffering from some sort of, it's like whoever signed that treaty, I'm guessing Mon Mothma. It's like, what's wrong with you, lady? So I'm completely at a loss in that regard. But yes, I don't remember actually why I remember why I got off on that tangent now. But the New Republic has to be considerably large. Still has to be a considerable political entity, regardless, right? It still has to be a considerably large. It has to be a considerably sized nation, state. Nation's not really the right word in this case, but it has to be a considerably sized state, and it's just defeated by one strike by Starkiller Base. No one thought this through, and it's just the most frustrating thing to me. The fact that no one thought this through is absolutely the most frustrating thing to me. So let's get away from that a bit. There's another element in the crawl that I would like to address, but I'll either do that later this video or in the next video. Probably later this video, assuming I don't forget. There's probably going to be a whole bunch of things that should have been in this video in the next video just because I'm going to have forgotten it, so you'll have to bear with me on that. By the way, you'll have to ignore the bright white void off to my left here. That's just the window. It has no curtains and it's daytime. Usually I record these at nighttime, so there's no light pouring through, but even on an overcast day like today, there's still a lot of light coming through. So, you'll just have to ignore the bright white void. We'll just say I'm like on Cloud City or something. So that brings me up to the first sequence in the movie, which is the battle against the Dreadnought. I do not understand this battle whatsoever. I really don't understand this battle. Like, I don't understand why, they want to stall for time, right? And there's this First Order fleet there. There's 3 Resurgent class Star Destroyers and that Dreadnought. And they send, and Poe goes out alone to stall for time with possibly the worst comedy bit I've ever seen. It's not even the worst comedy bit I've ever seen, because obviously that bit's been done before, but in different movies where it's actually funny as opposed to just dumb, tonally wrong, and just out of, and just not out of place. But I don't understand why Poe's stalling for time involved getting that weird supercharged booster on the back of his fighter charge up. Why is there even a supercharged booster on the back of his fighter? If you really want to launch an attack on the, if you really wanted to launch an attack on the Dreadnought, I don't understand why he didn't just, scramble all the fighters and try to destroy the surface batteries with all the fighters. I mean, it's not like a Dreadnought seems to have any shields for his, has any shields for its surface batteries. That's something I'll address incidentally later on when we talk about the next battle in the movie. But the thing is that I don't understand I don't understand the entire purpose of Poe's single-handed attack. From a military standpoint, it just doesn't make any sense. Why have Poe, if Poe is, if a fighter's capable of getting past the shields, I'm assuming that he was flying inside the cruiser shields or something, I don't understand why not just have multiple fighters attack all the batteries at once to minimize the chances of something going horribly wrong, And also to keep the fighters busy, to keep the TIE fighters busy, which will make it easier for the bombers to come in later on. Which is the whole other problem with this sequence. What is up with those bombers? Like, no, I understand what is up with those bombers. Rian Johnson wanted to create they're called Star Fortress bombers, and Rian Johnson clearly wanted to create a spaceship that was like the Flying Fortress. I can't remember, what was its designation? What was the class of the bomber in World War II again? That was called the Flying Fortress. I can't remember. I always get this one mixed up. I can't remember if it's the B-17 or not. Because when it comes to World War II technology and history, aircraft is not my thing. I'm only passingly aware of like certain aircraft models and everything, but I don't really know them all that well. But obviously he wanted to create like the Flying Fortress just in Star Wars. And literally managed to create the worst starship in all of Star Wars. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a starship that is worse designed than the Star Fortress. Because first of all, this ship is big. The ship is really big. It is very slow, and it is not very maneuverable at all. And this is the bomber that the Resistance is using. Incidentally, where the hell did they have these things docked? Can they fit inside the Radiss's hangar? Like, am I wrong for thinking that the Radiss's hangar is a little too short to fit the Star Fortress in? Unless, like, the Star Fortress, goes in, like, sideways or something. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like the Star Fortress can properly dock with the MC-85. That's just, I'm not really, or inside at least. Maybe it has outside ports. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why this bomber ship exists. Because it's such a terrible design. Because one of the things we've seen in Star Wars is that fighter craft are fast and they're highly maneuverable. And they're also pretty well armed for their size. Like starfighters in Star Wars are really small, but they pack a lot of punch. And the bombers that the Resistance is using are these slow, cumbersome beasts that clearly do not have enough defensive power to repel attacks from fighters. And it's just like, why would you even use a ship that's like this? Why would you do this? What is the point of using a ship that looks like this, that is, that handles like this? There's no point. Is clear throughout all the history of Star Wars that it's much smarter to use strike bombers, to use fighter bombers, strike bombers like the B-Wing, the Y-Wing, the TIE bomber, because those ships, they're considerably less, they don't have as much sturdiness as the Star Fortress. The Star Fortress is sturdy. It's just when it's suffering from concentrated attack by like 3 squadrons of TIE fighters, it obviously didn't hold up well enough. And, like one TIE fighter crashing into one destroyed 3. It's just like, this is not a good trade-off, guys. What is this? Why is this ship here? Why do you have this ship here? I don't understand. But it's obvious that using a ship like the Y-Wing would be superior. You couldn't get, while the bombs that the Star Fortress drops are clearly sufficiently powerful to blow up the Dreadnought with a single pass. I don't understand, I don't understand, first of all, how these bombs are dropping in space, maybe magnetized, but it's like that's never explained. And the sheer number of bombs it's dropping, it's just dropping the bombs, it's like there's just too many bombs dropping. And not only that, but, it's like you can't perform a surgical strike with these bombers. Not only that, but I'm also wondering, like, again, does the Dreadnought have shields? Because the one surviving Star Fortress was pretty far away from the ship, and it's like, are there no shields to protect the Dreadnought from this bombing run? And also, it's like, did the bombs hit a critical point on the ship? I do not understand what is happening in this scene. This was like these details in particular are incredibly distracting to me. If you look at my Twitter feed, in fact, I was live tweeting my reactions to The Last Jedi last night. Because it's just like, I got so frustrated with the movie after like half an hour, like after this scene, that like I just started to start venting. I had to start venting on the internet to convince myself to keep watching it. Because like, it was just like, this is, this movie isn't engaging me, and it's just frustrating me on so many levels. But I was talking originally about, like, why aren't they using strike bombers? In fact, if you wanted to introduce, like, a super heavy bomber, I know, like, all of Legends is non-canon and everything, that's why it's called Legends now, but it feels like that this would have been, like, the perfect opportunity to introduce something like the K-Wing from Legends. This would have been the perfect opportunity to do something like that, because the K-Wing isn't like this slow, sluggish thing. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit more maneuverable. It still has like the turreted defensive cannons, so that you still get the same sense of, oh, this is a super heavy bomber, that needs escort and whatnot. And, you could use that to bombard, and you could use that. Instead, they use this awful ship that almost completely fails to complete its attack run. It's horrendous, frankly. This entire sequence is horrendous from a military standpoint, from a strategic standpoint. Not only that, but it's just like, why, it's like, why are the surface batteries incapable of hitting Poe, but they be, I guess you can kind of say that, the reasons that the Star Fortresses are slow, but it's just like, it feels like the surface batteries would have been no more of a threat to the bombers than, the TIE fighters were. Frankly, with the TIE fighters swarming, it just meant that the surface batteries wouldn't have been able to shoot at the bombers anyway. So, I don't know. I am really lost on this sequence, because, again, it's like having things like B-Wings or Y-Wings would have been a lot smarter, because strike bombers are, since shields don't appear to be a problem here, since shields don't seem to be an issue here, it seems easy enough for the for a Y-Wing group or a B-Wing group to go underneath the Dreadnought and, hit the main guns directly. You don't even have to destroy the Dreadnought. All you have to do is commit a surgical strike against, against the main guns and maybe the bridge, and you're done. Not only that, but Rogue One established that ion torpedoes were a thing, or, like what we used to call mag pulse torpedoes back in Star Wars TIE Fighter. Magnetic pulse torpedoes that disable ships. Like we've established these are a thing. So is it unreasonable to think the Resistance might have them? Because, the Resistance has to, the Resistance is tiny, but it has to be better. It has to be better funded than the Rebel Alliance, because the Rebel Alliance wasn't funded by anyone at all. They were supported by a couple of really wealthy senators and whatnot, like Bail Organa, but they weren't really funded at all. The Rebels had to scrape everything together from scratch, basically, and they still had ion torpedoes. The Resistance is surreptitiously funded by the New Republic, though. So you think, like, they probably have to be fairly well equipped, all things considered. Like, they may not have a lot of things, but the things they have to be of pretty good quality, I would say. Or at least of reasonably good quality, I would say. But, it's like, but what do I know? I guess we just have to have a stupid bombing run that almost ends completely disastrously because the Resistance even decided to use the worst possible ship to do the attack. I don't know. Okay, so moving on from there, the next battle is when the Supremacy and its fleet ambushes the Raddus and the Resistance fleet. Again, shields. Where are the shields? Why? The shields only seem to work when the plot wants them to work. Okay, so first of all, this battle, why does the First Order only scramble, like, why does the First Order only scramble 4 fighters to launch this perfectly executed ambush on the Resistance fleet? The Resistance fleet is 4 ships. And you know how you get rid of 4 ships? Overwhelming power. You don't just shoot a few ships from your weird mortar cannons that shoot in parabolic arcs in space, which makes no fucking sense. You fire every single gun that is within range. You get your escorting Star Destroyers into range of the Resistance fleet and have them start bombarding the Resistance fleet to Kingdom Come, and you scramble 6 squadrons of fighters and swarm them. That's what you do when you perfectly execute an ambush. You overwhelm your enemy before they have time to react. And the First Order had every opportunity to do that. And it's just absolutely infuriating that it's the incompetence of the First Order that prevents them from destroying the Resistance right there and then and there. Because, I mean, hell, they were talking about how, like, they couldn't support Kylo anymore because the Resistance fleet had managed to move out of range, which I'm not 100% certain how this works, but we'll get to that in a second. But it's just like, you know what would solve that problem of the Resistance fleet moving out of range of the main guns of the Supremacy? A TIE fighter swarm! Because, I mean, if you really think about it, the First Order fleet there has to have well over 1,000 TIE fighters on it. And that's just on the escorting Resurgent-class Star Destroyers alone. Because I'm assuming that the Resurgent class is bigger and has this huge dedicated flight deck, right? You know, the Resurgent class is way bigger than an Imperial one, which carried 72 TIE fighters in it. And it has this massive dedicated flight deck right down the center of the ship. So there has to be at least 1,000 fighters on the escorts alone. And then the Supremacy itself has to carry at least 1,000 itself because it is such a massive ship. It probably carries like a couple thousand. And I've never looked at the official stats for this, and frankly, I don't want to, because, you know what? Just looking at these ships should tell you everything you need to know about the carrying capacity of this fleet in terms of support craft. And you're not going to launch absolutely everything, because what you're going to end up doing is just creating a situation where, you know, fighters are crashing into each other, and you know, like that, and, you know, the Resistance is inflicting lots of casualties despite that, and you're just taking unnecessary losses. But all you would have to do is launch like 1 or 2 Star Destroyers worth of TIE fighters, or probably just one. And then, you know, like when the first wave is gone, deploy the next wave. And just keep doing that until the Resistance is finally defeated. You know, so, if the Resistance isn't going to jump to light speed, that's all you got to do. And they don't do that. And I'm just like... And I'm knocking my glasses off of this again because... Okay. But anyway, okay, so they launch 4 fighters in this sortie. And the 3 escort fighters get taken out, which really serves no dramatic purpose because Kylo Ren is clearly not in any danger whatsoever during this sortie. Where the hell are the Radiss's shields? Where are the Radiss's shields? When he launches his initial attack run, he shreds like the upper armor of the Radiss, right? And then, you know, he does the first pass. He comes around, and while the remaining 2 escorts, because one gets shot down, are performing an attack somewhere, Kylo flies into the hangar and blows up all of the remaining Resistance fighters. And it's like, first of all, is that the only hangar? Or is there like a mirror hangar on the opposite side of the MC-85? I'm not really clear on that because we only ever see that side of the ship, I feel like. Seriously, I think we only ever see the starboard side of the Radiss. You know, when we see the port side, it's always from above. We never see below to see if there's another hangar. And then it's like, well, why did you store all your fighters in the starboard side instead of the port side? Or why did you just like split up between the starboard and port side in case this very scenario happens? Because it's not implausible it could happen if your shields are down or whatever. It's just that their shields are kind of clearly up. You know, like the shields are clearly taking hits from the Supremacy. So it's just like, how is Kylo flying into the ship? Why is this so utterly vulnerable that Kylo Ren can just fly in, shoot a couple of missiles into the hangar, and literally kill every single Resistance pilot who's not named Poe Dameron or Nyan Num? Why is that a thing that can happen? Why? Again, plot contrivances out... Because this is clearly a plot contrivance. The only reason the Radiss's shields don't work is so that every fighter can get blown up, including Poe's. You know, and incidentally, why didn't BB-8 get blown up? I'm so kind of wondering, given his ship was absolutely totaled, why didn't that destroy BB-8 too? I don't want BB-8 to get destroyed. I like BB-8, but what the fuck? I have no other reaction to this. Also, at the rate I'm going, I'm gonna run out of time for this video. But I'm gonna run out of time to do this video in its entirety. So I may just have to split it up and do it later, but... you know, not that, but I thought a couple of the pilots were actually kind of interesting, just to see them just get blown up and, you know, nothing happen to them, and just... That's all I have to say about that. Like, there's no other reaction to that. It's just... Well, there's a lot of wasted potential right there. Now more members of the Resistance are dead. Not only the fighter fleet from before, but now the rest of the fighter fleet is destroyed and dead. And as their engineering staff is dead. It's just like, did anyone think this through before these moments happened too? Because slowly over the course of the movie, the Resistance is utterly decimated. And I'll get to this later on. But the Resistance is absolutely decimated. And it's just like, one after the other, something horrible happens and the Resistance is just shredded. Anyway, back to the battle though. I don't understand though, like we see it in the battle against the Dreadnought, now we see it in this ambush here. It's like shields only matter when the plot wants them to matter. And bear in mind, like, Star Wars has done this before, right? Where shields don't always seem to be relevant as regards small craft. We see it in Return of the Jedi where, for example, during the initial attack running against the Star Destroyers, the Rebel fighters managed to destroy critical points on Star Destroyers, during that initial attack run. Or in Episode 3, Anakin Skywalker destroys the force field protecting the hangar on the Invisible Hand. Or in Star Wars Rebels, Hera flies the Ghost. She flies... What did she fly? It's not the Ghost. She flies the U-Wing through, one of the defensive defensive platforms even, over Lothal. So it's, clear, this has happened before. But the thing is that it's only in, relatively minor moments just to kind of, either show, either to have, dramatic tension or to, to show, just to give the plot a slight push. But the thing is that, shields apparently not being effective against fighters is, a vitally important plot point in this movie. The reason things happen in two instances in this movie, during the fight against the Dreadnought and during the ambush of the Raddus, the shields not being sufficient to protect against fighter attack is vitally important and extremely obvious. And that is really bad. That is really bad. Because it's because it makes you start thinking about it, because in Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith and Rebels, you don't think about it because either the moment is cool or it's not a huge deal because you could see something else happening to make this situation work. But the only way that the Dreadnought loses its defensive turrets, the only way the Raddus loses its bridge, the only way everyone gets blown out into space is if the shields just simply don't work against starfighters. And that is absolutely maddening because it feels like The Last Jedi has now established a rule here. It feels like there's a rule here, like an unavoidable rule here, like that shields don't matter. Rogue One too, but again, it feels like that member of Blue Squadron who blew up that one tower on the Star Destroyer. It kind of feels like that. It feels like that might have been a bit of a surgical strike, the shields are got weakened here during a fighter attack, so let's blow up this tower while we still have the chance. I have the chance, which is why he's really gunning for it despite being pursued by TIE fighters. Again, if when these things happen, first of all, it's on vulnerable points like that. It's on specific vulnerable points, and it might just be a surgical strike, the shields might be weaker there for whatever reason. Who knows? You can kind of extrapolate or make assumptions that won't hurt the premise of the movie. But of course, because the shields don't work, that's how, almost the entirety of the commanding, the entirety of the Resistance's command structure is annihilated in a single strike. It's just plot contrivances out the butthole. Okay, so after that point, I noticed a lot of people started to nitpick, like, the physics in this movie in the immediate aftermath of The Last Jedi being released. Like, the bombs dropping out of the Star Fortress bombers, or the fact that somehow the Resistance fleet stays just out of range of the First Order fleet, despite the fact that, if the Resistance is faster, then they have to be faster than the First Order fleet, and ergo are capable of staying completely out of range of the First Order fleet. And I'm just kind of lost as to what the thinking was here. I'm also I'm bothered by the fact during that whole that long chase sequence, why precisely is the First Order capable of staying within weapons range? Why isn't the fact that the First Order, the Supremacy's literally been bombarding the Bradis for 18 hours straight, why no one's perturbed about that? Are you telling me the shots are really that weakened over that distance that shooting really just makes no difference? It's like there's I don't understand what's going on here. I do not understand for the life of me what's going on during this entire chase sequence. Okay, so now we talked about all that. Admiral Holdo. So it was explained to me during my live tweeting rant last night that Holdo is actually Leia's childhood friend. Why the fuck did the movie not explain this whatsoever? I mean, I'm not sure how important that is to the grand scheme of things, but but I'm asking, who the fuck is she? Why is she in this position? There's no reason, because based on what I'm seeing, there is no reason for Admiral Holdo to have the position she has. Because honestly, and even then, and honestly, her being Leia's childhood friend really doesn't help matters in the slightest. It actually makes things look worse, because, did she get her position because she's Leia's childhood friend? Is that the only reason she has it? I don't know. I can't tell. I'm not sure. I'm confused. Because she is completely, and actually, before I talk about Admiral Holdo, Poe getting demoted for defying orders. I'm going to talk about the defying orders thing a little more in depth. In the next video, because it's more involves character and everything, and what he did to get there. It involves a lot more character, and I want to talk about that in the other video. But Princess Leia, or General Leia, General Organa, she slaps Poe. I'm surprised. I've watched several people review The Last Jedi, and they talk about all the big points. Hell, I watched Mauler's 5.5 hour long review about The Last Jedi, where he breaks down everything scene by scene, and he does not address this even. Princess Leia slaps Poe Dameron for disobeying orders. She slaps him across the face like he's some sort of disobedient child. That feels like the most massive breach of protocol. That is, she's supposed to be a military leader, but what does she do? She physically slaps Poe, in front of other officers and crewmen aboard the Raddus. She, instead of just giving him a traditional dressing down, while he's standing at attention, and he receives a formal dressing down by Leia, Admiral Akbar standing there, whatever. No, it just immediately cuts to Poe, to Leia slapping Poe. And it's just does anyone who's working on this movie know how a military works? I understand that the Resistance is kind of a bit of a ragtag organization, but the Resistance is full of military veterans! It is full of military veterans! Admiral Akbar, Nyan Nam, General Organa! And it's full of people who are clearly, skilled pilots and skilled officers, and she slaps him! What the fuck?! I didn't get this angry last night, but I saw that, and I was just what is this bullshit? You do not slap people like they are children in the military. You do that, and suddenly you're on the line for whatever bullshit you're pulling. I'm sorry, but what the fuck is that? All right, you wanna reprimand him? Put him in the brig. Okay? Dress him down, demote him, and stick him in the brig for a few hours. Just don't fucking slap him like he stood you up on a date or something. What the f***? Hello, welcome to the Void again. It's even worse because it's actually the middle of the day now instead of the morning where it's a little more shadowed. But, okay. So it's actually been a very long time since I recorded the first part of this video, so there's been a bit of a separation. And I gotta be honest, I actually legitimately got angry about the whole Leia slapping Poe thing as I was talking, when I was recording that first part yesterday. That was some legitimate anger right there. And I actually couldn't quite figure out why I was getting quite so frustrated with the scene. And it finally occurred to me, I was at work, and it finally occurred to me why precisely that was the case. And that it's not only that it was a breach of decorum, though that is definitely a huge part of it. The breach of decorum just really frustrated me. It was also the fact that it does a disservice to Leia. Because if you really think about it, in the original trilogy, would you ever believe that Princess Leia would slap someone, if someone had done something wrong or someone had wronged her? Do you ever think that Leia would really have slapped someone? Is that a reaction you think she would do? Or do you think that she'd be a lot more professional about it? And it's just when you really think about it, it's when you look at none of the original trilogy characters really have gotten a fair shake in this trilogy, have they, so far? Luke's been a grumpy old man, and I'll talk about that more next time, but, Luke's been a grumpy old man. Han Solo's gotten all of his character development completely reverted. Leia's slapping people. C-3PO is there. R2-D2 is there. And Chewie's the punchline of a bunch of jokes, and it's just great. Also, Admiral Akbar dies like a chump. And Nien Nunb is there. Man, none of these legacy characters get anything. I mean, forget everyone else. None of these legacy characters really get anything. Maybe Yoda, but even then, it's just he called down lightning as a Force ghost. It's oh, you can do that now. Great. No, I'm really happy about that. So anyway, I think that's the primary reason I got really frustrated with that moment, though, because it's that's not this. Everything is wrong about it. Frankly, everything is wrong about it. From an objective to a subjective standpoint, everything is wrong about it. All right, so on to Vice Admiral Holdo. I cannot with this character. I had seen some things before I actually watched the movie. Of course, plenty of things before I actually watched the movie. But it did not prepare me for how much of a bitch that woman is. Because she seemed to be more concerned with condescending to Poe Dameron than with actually, leading her fleet effectively. I'm so confused on that. I ask again, where did she come from? How did she get this position? Because, it's just she doesn't seem like a vice admiral. She doesn't seem professional. She doesn't seem capable. She doesn't dress like a vice admiral. Where's your uniform, madam? I'm just at a complete loss as to what's going on with this character. Why is she here? I am so that, and that's what aggravates me. And it's when it comes to the mutiny, it's I'm pretty sure Poe was totally justified in engaging in a mutiny against her, because it's what is she trying to do? She's not telling anyone. She doesn't seem to have a plan. She's refusing to tell anyone a plan if she has one. It's no wonder morale cratered among the crew. I understand the argument that technically she's under no obligation to tell anyone the plan if she doesn't really want to. But that's a stupid argument. Because, first of all, multiple people should know what's going on precisely so that it's precisely so that in case something happens to Vice Admiral Holdo, everyone else isn't flailing around in the fleet, especially since Poe is basically the second in command there. Demoted or not, if something happened to Vice Admiral Holdo, everyone's going to say, and since Leia's in a coma for 18 hours, everyone's going to turn to Poe and go, okay, so what's the plan, Flyboy? We have approximately 35 minutes of fuel left, and Admiral Holdo got thrown out the airlock completely by accident. But I mean, I'm just saying that it's like, I'm just saying that it's like, how, it's like, what did she expect anyone to do? What did she expect them to think of, And people have come up with this theory that maybe she suspected there was a mole in the fleet, but it's like, there's never any indication of that in the movie, so that's kind of a null argument because that's just never indicated in the movie. There's never like a private conversation. It's like, I don't trust anyone right now, so I would rather keep the plan close to the vest because, because betraying the plan is going to, telling the plan to too many people could potentially betray it to the First Order. So that's why my thinking is there. But yeah, it's just the general ineptitude. Like she completely failed to keep morale up while their fleet's slowly getting picked apart, and I'm just, and that's the sum total of it. Like, I can't even say there's many problems with Vice Admiral Holdo in that I don't know if there's anything super wrong with her character. It's more like how her character's portrayed, especially because in a couple of moments she's portrayed kind of villainously. As the fleet kind of drops off, it's like, it's like she just tells him to stay the course, and engage in blind faith with her, and it's just like, I can understand blind faith when it comes to, being religious, especially if your faith comes through. If you're a Christian and, the Lord blesses you, it's like, yeah, okay, faith is understandable there. But Admiral Holdo is just a simple woman, and it's just like she expects everyone to follow her blindly without any inkling as to what their hope is, as to what they're aiming to do, what they ought to be preparing for. And I'm just, yeah, that's pretty much what I am right now. I'm just completely baffled and puzzled by that. Now, back to like true military strategy and not just military characters and military characters' behavior. I guess the next thing to talk about is probably the worst scene in the entire movie. The coolest looking, but the worst scene, the hyperspace ramming maneuver. Sorry, I had to steel myself a second for this. Because this one's a little difficult to unpack. Sure, it's the coolest scene in the movie, visually speaking, but is possibly the worst scene in all of Star Wars. Because as plenty of people have pointed out, using hyperspace to ram targets is, it completely negates the entirety of the rest of the saga. Every other battle where you see battleships slugging out, where you see Death Stars being built, where you see Starkiller bases blowing things up, all of that is rendered completely irrelevant by the weaponizing of hyperspace. Because you know what? It's really expensive to make Mon-Call cruisers or Star Destroyers, and it's a lot cheaper to take a hyperdrive, slap it onto a block of tungsten or iron or something, and hyperspace it through something. And just hyperspace it through an object. I mean, you don't even need like a complete ship. All you need is like maybe like with an outer shell with some supports, Durasteel, an outer shell, good, put some supports in it. Maybe put like a really heavy core in the middle just to be safe. Put a small reactor on, enough to power the hyperdrive, put a couple of engines on it, and you've immediately got the most powerful battering ram in the universe. And it's just like any future space battle now is going to be rendered completely irrelevant by this scene unless they come up with some sort of explanation for it. It's like, unless they come up with some sort of explanation for this, like why they can't do it all the time, which I think there's a lot of like I'm going to try that again. I think there's a lot of perfectly reasonable explanations for this, like I mean, like just hitting something hitting something in real space when you're in hyperspace, causes issues with hyperspace. It causes disruptions in hyperspace, like makes it more difficult to use hyperspace. Something like that. Something, something just to kind of explain it. I think would be perfectly acceptable. But to just kind of show it happening and then not think well, wait, it's like the Radis is compared to the Supremacy, compared to Supremacy and 13 Star Destroyers, the Radis is one ship, and it's kind of small, and it's kind of cheap. It's underpowered for its size. But if you can use that one ship to critically damage a 60-kilometer wide starship and destroy 13 other ships besides it, it's like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that every single battle from now on? What's the point of having battleships and dreadnoughts and battle stations if you can just solve it by taking an X-Wing and an A-Wing, or, something bigger, depending on the target, a Corvette, a frigate, a cruiser, and just hyperspacing it through that object. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it's funny also that someone pointed out before that the fact that, Admiral Holdo didn't take the Radis dead center through the Supremacy was a really stupid plot contrivance. The only reason she took it through the starboard wing was because, because three of our main characters and one of our main secondary characters, happens to be on the Supremacy, roughly dead center on it. So she hyperspaced through the middle of the ship, which would have destroyed it utterly. She instead opted to hyperspace through the wing, and it's just, again, plot conveniences. Because General Hux is on the bridge, and Rey and Kylo are in the throne room, and Finn, and I totally forgot about Rose. In the hangar, and Captain Phasma. So of course going dead center would have killed them all, but it's just like, if you just aimed a little better, there would have been absolutely no threat to Crate. Probably, anyway. Because a dead center hit probably would have hit the ship's primary reactor and probably destroyed most of the thing. At least, I imagine it would have taken out, most of the hangar facilities aboard the Supremacy, so that it'd be very difficult for anyone who manages to escape to actually, who wasn't killed by the initial attack, to actually escape to warn the rest of the First Order that, hey, the Resistance is actually still around. Ooh, excuse me. Speaking of that, though, there's also the matter of the evacuation transports just suddenly being discovered. First of all, I am really irked by the fact that these small transports apparently have cloaking technology, when, one, cloaking technology is not commonplace in Star Wars anyway, but apparently it is now, but it's never been established that it is. It just suddenly is. Last time a cloaking device was remarked upon, it was Captain Nita saying that the Millennium Falcon couldn't possibly have one because it's too small. So they exist, but it's like, they're obviously not expecting it to be on a ship that small, and these transports are, roughly the same size as the Millennium Falcon, I bet? Probably a little smaller, honestly, and, they're a little bit smaller. Probably have the same carrying capacity as the Falcon, but they overall have less surface area on them. But apparently they're cloaked, and then they're just perfectly ready to have a decloaking scan, and it's just, again, more plot conveniences. The only reason these things are cloaked and there's a decloaking scan is just to quote unquote add dramatic tension. And then the Supremacy, despite the fact that shooting at maximum range is somehow managing to hit with these arcing mortar turbo laser shot things, I don't know what they are, is somehow managing to hit every single transport dead on, which apparently has no shields, has no way to protect themselves from incoming fire, and the Supremacy's hitting them perfectly every single time, despite shooting at maximum range at tiny targets. And also, what are these tiny targets doing? Why are these tiny targets not spreading out, doing evasive maneuvers, trying to, not get shot to pieces? That entire sequence is wrong. I hate to say it, but the entire sequence is wrong for that very reason. It's like more than 2/3 of the, Admiral Holdo, for some stupid reasons, just twiddling thumbs on the bridge watching this, 2/3 of the evacuation transports are destroyed by excessively accurate fire from the supremacy. Like no one's scrambling fighters to attack these unarmed transports, especially given that the Radis has been evacuated. So it's not going to be able to provide supporting fire to protect the transports. And you can see how frustrated I am with all of the logical holes in these scenes, because it is only ineptitude that anyone manages. It is only the ineptitude of the First Order. It's only the ineptitude, rather, let me put it this way. It's the ineptitude of the Resistance that causes them to lose like 300 people on these transports. And then it's an ineptitude of the First Order to not finish the job when they had the chance. Also, something else that occurs to me? What are these cloaks exactly that these ships are apparently perfectly visible? And don't tell me it's for the sake of the audience, because you know what? They're perfectly visible on the supremacy's scope. If anything, they like on this camera feed that Snoke has for some reason, and it's just like, but wait, shouldn't he just be showing her like blank space and then periodically a shot arcs in and blows up one of the transports? It's like, is that what should be happening? Because they just ran a decloaking scan. Shouldn't these things be invisible to the First Order? I don't understand anything. I do not understand any of this. Or, like it'd be like some sort of red wire frame to indicate like we know where this is, but we don't actually have like a visual on it because they're cloaked. What is a cloak then? What is a cloak? How does it operate? What is its purpose? Why are you calling it a cloak then? I don't. Is it just like are they shielded from scans? But because they're so tiny, they're roughly invisible. But it's so tiny and thus roughly invisible, then how's the supremacy hitting with every single shot? You see, the deeper I go into this rabbit hole, the more problems I'm finding. I think I just hit the end of it, but I keep finding more problems every single time. And it's just, every single time I run through it in my head as I'm talking, it gets worse. I guess the final element after this, when it comes to military strategy, is the big ground battle on Crate. Where they obviously had to have a bunch of First Order walkers, which are like AT-ATs, but better, and they're fighting on a planet of salt instead of snow, or like some sort of salt flat, and I just. First of all, this movie did not need the second, third act. It was 100% totally, completely unnecessary. They should have wrapped this up differently, or if they were going to have this as a second, third act, then they shouldn't have had the whole hyperspace maneuver. No matter how you cut it, they should have done this differently. And you just watch this, and you're just, I don't know, there isn't anything like technically wrong, I think, about this, except maybe the super laser battering ram. And the whole, Rose screwing up Finn's suicide run thing, but that's, frankly, a next video thing, because that's a character issue more than a tactics issue. And I don't know, I don't understand why if it's a super laser, why does it have to move closer to get into position? Why not just land it, far enough away that you're out of range of the main batteries and shoot it from there? It's not like the super laser it's not like a mini super laser is going to lose that much cohesion from that distance that it couldn't blow up on that door. If anything, that's the only real problem there. And of course, Kylo Ren fixating on the Millennium Falcon excessively to get every single fighter to chase it, and that's just like... And of course, every single fighter gets destroyed chasing the Falcon, and it's just... More plot conveniences, again. I mean, I don't mind plot armor protecting heroes, but when it's so obvious, that's just embarrassing. Like, I'm sorry, but it should not be that obvious. And then the movie ends, and Rey's like, how are we going to rebuild from this? And Leia tells her not to worry, and I'm just like, are you serious? The Resistance started with a fleet of 4 ships and maybe 600 personnel total, which is a really small group, which is a really small organization anyway. And it ended the movie with a freighter that is either 40 years old if Solo If the Solo movie is any indication, or 80 years old, according to legends, you know, something like that. It's a really old ship, though, and about 20 to 30 people. The Resistance doesn't come back from that. Or if it does, it's going to take a very long time. Like, if Episode 9 doesn't start with, like a massive time skip, enough time for, like, the Resistance rebuild, I mean, like, a year. Like, it's got to be multiple years for the First Order to consolidate power, multiple years for Resistance to try and consolidate strength, and to try and get allies, to try and figure out why its Outer Rim allies are assholes. You know, it needs time. That's the only way to really make it believable. Because right now, the Resistance has been completely demolished. Their morale has to be cratered. Like the movie tries to end on a hopeful note, but it's like, no, realistically, their morale has to be at the bottom. It has to be cratered. It has to be gone. There has to be no morale left with them because they've lost almost everything and everyone. They have no ships. They have no supplies. They only have 30 people. And Carrie Fisher is dead. And it's just like, no one thinks the ramifications of these things through. And that is absolutely the most infuriating part of both of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi to me. No one thinks the implications through. You know, the implications of the destruction of the effective destruction of the Resistance. Because at the end of the movie, despite the casualties the First Order suffered, they won. They beat the Resistance. A handful of Resistance got away, but that's not a fighting force. That's not something that can strike back. And now apparently the New Republic is destroyed, so how are they going to get the resources to fight back? Are they just going to grab a bunch of T-65 X-Wings out of mothballs and fly them around? Because they're going to be outmatched because, you know, they're older technology. They're going to be outmatched by the First Order. Except their plot armor, you know? But it's Millennium Falcons. I can kind of hand wave that one away. It's to the point. Apropos what I said, just said like 5 minutes ago. But anyway, it's just like, yeah, this is really frustrating for me because none of this really makes sense. None of this really is going to work. I mean, how do they expect this to work? How do they expect the Resistance to recover from this? You know, JJ's going to try, certainly, but he's going to do a bad job of it because he's J.J. Abrams. You know, like I've mentioned before, J.J. Abrams is a competent filmmaker. He makes fun action movies, but he's not a good filmmaker. He doesn't make good films. He doesn't make films that are going to stick with you going to stick out the test of time. You know, because his films are always full of plot holes. They always have gaps in terms of the world building. The characters are a little, the characters tend to be two-dimensional, and it's just... The Last Jedi does not leave me encouraged for the future. If only because of all the world-building stuff I've been talking about already. And it's a pity, too, because, I was one point excited to be getting more Star Wars content. There was once upon a time I was going to love getting more Star Wars content, but here we are. But I guess we'll address this more in the next episode, because there's a lot more to unpack here. And I know plenty of people have done it already, but I really want to do it myself. I want to vent, honestly, more than anything. That's my purpose in doing these, just because it's just like, I was hoping people would be wrong about this. I was hoping people were wrong, and on a certain level, I feel like they were a little bit wrong. I feel like the movie has a little bit of positive in it that some people didn't give it any credit for, but it's a little bit, and I'm going to talk about that in my next little rant about The Last Jedi. So, thanks for watching this, and I will catch you next time, as Star Wars continues to disappoint me. What did I just say? Until next time, everybody.